You're not going to know this, but Jason starred in the movie Rogue Trader. I use the word starred. He may have a different description of it, but he has one advantage over me. He met Ewan McGregor. I never did. So let's hear from Jason anyway. And Jason, if you just give a bit of an introduction to yourself, and maybe we'll talk about a market afterwards.
Well, I didn't star in the movie, but I did appear in it as an extra in the trading pits because I looked like I could be Singaporean and they needed someone who understood the hand signals. I actually, because I'm so short, they had to put me on a box in the pit so the camera could find my face. But I did meet Ewan McGregor. He was very nice indeed.
Yeah, I often get asked how lifelike his portrayal of me was. I suppose one of the things that I always joke about when I'm talking at events these days, or how I start a lot of those events, is by apologizing for the fact that I look nothing like him. But, somehow they cast him as me. I don't know how they did that, but just give us a little bit of background about yourself, Jason.
Okay, I started on the floor of the London Stock Exchange in 1987 when I was 19 years old, in the derivatives corner of the stock exchange. So I was in derivatives for about 15 years. A few years later, early 90s, I moved over to the London International Financial Futures Exchange as an options market maker. Great fun on the open outcry markets, of course, as you well know. And then I managed to survive that period through to the end of the 90s when the life floor, the London International Financial Futures Exchange, closed. And then we all had to transition, as you mentioned earlier, into screen trading, which wasn't easy. Well, actually, for options, it was possibly easier, because instead of having to calculate all the Greeks, the gammas, the thetas, and the deltas in my head when I traded, it was all done for me on a screen, which was amazing to have all this all calculated in. I could work out my hedge immediately. Anyway, that was the transition, and then I moved on to trading Forex and learning technical analysis about 20 years ago. And then I provide technical analysis based advice and signals on a daily basis these days.
Okay. One of the things I've been looking at over the last couple of days is Bitcoin. Extremely volatile the last couple of days. It's traded up to 102,000, back down to 96, and is fluctuating in that sort of range. But some of the research I'm looking at is talking about a line of death. Bitcoin may be getting up to around that 110,000 mark, and then falling back from those levels, but falling back significantly. Do you have any thoughts on where Bitcoin's going to go?
From a purely technical perspective, and that's the way I work, just looking at the charts, we're in a consolidation. We've been going basically sideways since the 21st of November. So we've been up a bit, we've been down a bit, we're kind of holding in the 90s. There isn't any particular pattern that suggests that the market's going to drop significantly, although I could argue there's a head and shoulders pattern. A head and shoulders pattern is when you get a peak followed by a higher peak, but then the next peak is lower than the previous peak, and that indicates a trend change. Now, we would need to break below 91,000 for that pattern to be confirmed. So at the moment, it's not relevant. But if we broke below 91,000, I would be concerned about a move to the downside, and it could be quite significant. I mean, 70,000 is not out of the question if that were to happen.
Right, and it's getting close to that 91,000 level all of the time. It's picked back up a little bit today, but we'll bring more of that sort of analysis over the weeks. I think Jason and I will also be inviting some of our friends from the trading area to come in and share their views and their own experiences and their own careers, and we'll look at that a little bit more in depth, and we'll certainly have a market segment to the podcast moving forward. Thanks for that, Jason. We'll move on to the other hosts now.